marriage show. We're talking about a very controversial topic today, but before I introduce, you go ahead.
Assalamualaikum. Good morning, everybody. Rainy Sunday in London.
No rain. I can't see
Well,
rain.
there will be.
Oh, you're predicting it.
Yeah, you can see that the rain is coming. So we are in London. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you are having a good time. It's Sunday morning for us. We just had a little bit of a breakfast, and we have a very interesting topic to talk about today.
Indeed. And what's the topic today? You want to introduce while
Well,
I get this set up?
Infidelity. We had an interesting week with Matt Hancock doing all sorts of things. So we
Oh, was it inspired by Matt Hancock?
Well, I don't get inspired by Matt Hancock per se, but the topic itself is something that, within our community we need to talk about, and this is a lot to discuss.
Had I known it was inspired by Matt Hancock, I would have refused to participate, but it's too late now.
No, I'm not inspired by Matt Hancock by the slightest, but I'm inspired by the topic very much. So please do share with us your views and your ideas. Maybe it has some strong reactions in you when I say once a cheater is always a cheater. Maybe you don't believe in that, maybe you do. And let's talk about infidelity, because it's something that I think it affects everyone.
Of course.
Those who do it.
In different ways, people are affected. And unfortunately, when people are affected, there is very little they can do.
When people are affected?
Yeah, because it's already happened. And it's so strong and striking, and it debilitates the other person. They don't know what to do. That's what I mean. There is very little they can do. You can't do anything about changing that. It's happened. That's what I mean by it. There is not much you can do. But there's a lot you can do to strengthen your relationship in order for it not to happen. So we want to talk about the reasons. So the act itself, the causes, the reasons, root causes, the impact, and what actions. What do we do after that? That's what we're going to talk about. What about you? Would you like to talk about infidelity with us? If you want to talk about it, you're more than welcome. You can share your thoughts, your ideas, your questions, even stories that you may have heard of from people. As long as you don't mention their names, it's fine. If you're sharing your own story, that's okay. We are here to discuss, explore, and most importantly, help you make sense of this awful experience many people have in their lives.
What is infidelity? That's the first question that came to my mind. And what's your definition? What constitutes infidelity? There's a whole lot of discussion around, is it talking to somebody in a flirtatious way? Is it sexting? Is it sending, mixed messages? Is it moving away from your partner? Is that already part of infidelity? Is it engaging in different kinds of conversations?
Emotional, physical, as well as many other forms of infidelity does exist. Obviously, we need to discuss them, unpack them, and try and make it clear for people. But most important part of infidelity is the broken trust. I think how you do it and what you do is irrelevant, as far anyway for me. Most important is that there is a broken trust. The trust has been destroyed once and for all. Marriage is supposed to be a safe space, a sakina. Sakina is supposed to be a home. If you're an Arab, and if you want to ask another Arab, where do you live? Where do you come from? Where do you live? Especially, the first question you'd be saying is, Aina taskunu? The Arabic word sakina means, where is your home? Right? Allah says in the Quran, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so that you can live with them in tranquility, according to some translation, peace according to other. But I say, in a home that is safe and secure. Is the concept of infidelity or the practice of infidelity a antithesis to the concept of a safe home?
Interesting question. I'm just wondering if anyone is with us, or
I think people are watching. It's live. There are a few people. Nobody has yet woken up to make a comment yet. I think
we are not recording yet, right?
We're not
on record.
No, we're not on recording at local level. No, it's broadcasting. It's live. People are watching. I can see some people are on it already. Alhamdulillah. When I say I can see some people are on it, I can see the numbers of people watching it. I can't see you. Don't get worried. I had a neighbor who used to say, "Oh my God, you must be watching me from television from the other side." I said, "No, we can never see you. You can always see us." Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching this program, no matter how difficult this program may sound, or this topic may sound, do stay in touch. Do get in touch. Send us a message to say, yes, we're listening. Yes, we're interested, or we're not interested. I don't mind. We don't have no problem with hearing people who are not interested in what we're discussing. We will discuss something else at another date when it will be interesting for you. So do give us a message right now. If you're listening, if you're watching us, if you can hear us, confirm that the video is being broadcast. Ah, there you go.
Here we go.
Lagdar Koli says, yes, we are, with both
Great.
hands. Wonderful.
you.
Thank you very much. That's very good.
So at least we know the sound is working, the technology is working. So we are talking about a really hard topic today, but also very challenging, but also an opportunity for us to learn about ourselves and how we can strengthen relationships. So infidelity is something that might have happened to you. You know somebody who it has happened to. You might have been thinking about it, because that's not dismissed. You know, that's also happening in a lot of people's mind. How far do we go? Maybe you are in circumstances where infidelity is just calling you. What is infidelity for you? What does it mean? How do you feel about the whole concept? Where do you draw the line?
Well, let's start with Matt
trust?
Hancock's recent story, since it's in the open air. Matt Hancock was and has been in the cabinet, even at Theresa May's time. Now he was, until yesterday, the Health Secretary of State for Health. He's the one who has been telling the whole nation to abide by COVID rules. But his affair has led him to compromise not only his position and his power and authority, but he's also broken the trust that he had. A trust that he was building slowly but surely with the community, with the world. People were listening to his advice about how to stay safe, keep covered, blah, blah, blah. But he broke those very protocols himself. So infidelity could be as the one we have seen with Matt Hancock, destroying the trust and confidence that people have about him. His own wife, of course, and his own children have been badly affected by his infidelity with his schoolmate. I think they went to the same school.
I don't know, but they knew each other.
No, they went to the same school or same college, and that's how.
It's, to me, it's immaterial who you do it with.
Yes, it's done.
It's done.
And once it's done, it's a whole trail of destruction, and that's what we're trying to unpack here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very difficult topic. You may not want to discuss it, you may not want to hear it, but it's happening in our community. It's happening. I hear it. I get people calling me. I have counselors. I've got clients who come to see me about infidelity, husband infidelity, wife infidelity. By the way, it's not only men who have infidelity, women too. If a man is having an affair with somebody, he has to have it with somebody, and that has to be a woman often. And therefore, infidelity is a both two-way process. Fatima Islam says salam to both of you. Wa alaikum assalam, Fatima.
Assalamu alaikum, Fatima.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for talking to us. I do want to hear from you. We want to talk about this topic. So what is infidelity in your view? Go on, brothers and sisters. Put some words and your thoughts on our screen. What is infidelity?
What is it for you? But I'm quite clear about this, and I think although there's a whole lot of discussions of where do you start infidelity. I think it starts in the mind. It starts in thought, and it starts as a story in our head, and it turns into a full-lived thing on the page because we do it.
Reese B, R-E-E-S, Reese B says, salam beautiful people from twin single mummy and my 2-year-old are playing while I actually watch you live. Thank you very much. P.S. A great and tricky topic but needs a discussion for sure. What do you make, Reese B? What is infidelity for you? Aisha Begum says, Salamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam, Aisha.
Salam,
Welcome
Aisha.
to our program. We're asking what is infidelity for you. You're about to ask me that question. I did say infidelity can be in all sorts of forms. It is the broken trust. So you breach the trust by inviting somebody else into your life, physically or emotionally. That's it.
Yeah. So it's, for me, I'm saying similar things, but for me it starts in the mind.
Oh,
it's about understanding. No, it's about understanding the boundaries, the borders, because you can, and of course it brings up all sorts of conversations around a friendship between men and women. You know, what are the boundaries of friendship between the opposite sex? How do you know when you have overstepped? How do you know when someone is coming over to your boundaries, which are not very clear? So I think it's a very complicated but very interesting topic. For me, what most interesting, what I've seen in my clients do, is that often there is a justification for the one who cheats. There's a justification. Oh, my wife or my husband hasn't been available, hasn't been attentive to me, hasn't given me my rights, so to speak. So there's a whole lot of package around is just justified because the other person is not available. So I think one of the things that we know for sure that it's probably a seed for infidelity is that unavailability, and being emotionally unavailable is a very interesting and very important stage to understand about ourselves and about our partner.
I want to take up on the concept of mental infidelity you talked about. I don't agree with you, because mental infidelity you can't really regulate. What goes through our mind will not be a question for by Allah on the Day of Judgment either.
Right.
Because we're not going to be questioned by Allah on the Day of Judgment either. In our mind, what goes through it should not be an issue at all. Why should it be an issue?
Because it turns into action.
Yeah, but if it doesn't turn into an action, you can't control my mind. There are lots of things you can say just in case it turns into an action. We cannot be responsible for some of the fleeting thoughts that go through our head.
Okay, that's very interesting, because Imam Al-Ghazali said something amazing about this. Is that what it starts is a thought. He doesn't talk about infidelity, of course, but he thinks about how we develop habits and how we do things. What starts in the head as a thought is not even conscious often.
Yeah, it's a fleeting thought, as we call it.
Yes, and we attend it, and we attend
Well, that's the next level.
and we attend it.
That's the next level.
You're still in your mental capacity. You still haven't done anything
So
yet.
mine is the first level, which is a mental fleeting thought. You're not responsible for it.
That's fine. I agree with that.
Okay, so if we are agreeing that there is no we agree that mental thoughts you're not accountable for, what you do with that mental thought and how you translate that into action is in itself a crime. So you start planning, you start looking, you start searching.
Engaging.
That's no longer a mental thought. That's an active engagement. And if it's an active engagement, it becomes the breach. But mental thought is not a breach. I don't want to imprison people in their thoughts. That's my worry. That's why I'm clarifying.
No, of course, we are not angels. We are not sitting
No.
here and never think about anybody else. That's not the case. And I think that's one of the pressures that we have in our community, is that we don't address this, that I don't know anybody who doesn't think about, flirting, or I don't know anyone, because we are
course.
human beings.
You always wonder.
We will always think about this.
Oh, what would be life like with that other person?
Yeah.
That's normal human nature, to think and analyze and even compare. No problem. But as long as you don't pursue it, okay, I see my neighbor was very beautiful, very attractive, and I think I'm wondering how would life be like with her. And then I stop there. Fine, you've not sinned. But once I start peeping, once I start flirting, once I start looking, once I start doing actively things that would enable me to build that life or experience, that becomes a problem. Reese B says, in my opinion, break of trust, boundaries, disrespect, and major communication breakdown. 100% correct.
Yes.
So boundaries when it's broken, trust when it's broken, when we break our communication, that's when, of course, infidelity happens. But before all of that, we want to talk about mind. So what happens in our head? Our head has a fantastic capacity to be able to create, recreate, imagine, and further imagine, dramatize and create even blockbuster films in our heads. You're not responsible for any of those thoughts as long as it doesn't translate into action. What's an action? Anything that follows from that thought into your behavior. Halima has given us a love heart. Thank you, Halima. May Allah accept it. Abdurrahman. Anyway, that's infidelity defined. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the beginning of fantasizing, right? So it's when you start, that's the thought level, is that you fantasize.
But that's not infidelity.
It's not infidelity, but the thought process of fantasizing is very likely going to lead you to
Not 100% sure with that.
if you act on it.
Yeah, so once you start acting on it, it becomes infidelity. Do we agree with that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, good. So your thoughts you're not responsible for, fair enough, but as soon as you start acting on it, it opens up the door to infidelity. That's why the Quranic verse is very simple. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا, and don't go near it, because going near it will open up the doors. Right? It's normal. If you're in a space with somebody of the opposite gender and there is a chemistry between the two of you, that chemistry could lead to explosions. Right?
There's something also very interesting, is that, we are asked, as Muslims, we are asked to use our capacities to think through the situation. And there's one thing I remember I heard many, many years ago in one of the retreats I went to. I can't remember where it was. It says, what leads to wrong is wrong.
It's not only a statement, it's a Sharia principle, Islamic principle. What
Right.
leads to haram in itself is haram.
Yeah, but also what leads to wrong itself
Yeah.
is wrong. So for us, if we are conscious human beings, which what we are required to be in any circumstance, and there will be times when we have to be really pull our socks up and think about it properly. But what leads to wrong, and if you recognize that process of it is wrong, you are able to stop yourself from pursuing it, because often we hear from people, oh, one thing led to another. Well, things lead to another because you are leading them to.
You're allowing.
You are doing it yourself. So it's not like one thing leads to another, it's you are actively participating in the leading of the action to happen. So it's for me, that's why the mental process is so important. That, you know, when I was growing up, I so many times I questioned this whole, because I grew up with non-Muslims and the environment was, you know, everything goes. But I could always just admire my mother, how faithful she was and how loyal she was to my dad, even though my dad wasn't the greatest of husbands. But she was so loyal. And once I asked her, why do you do this? And my grandmother was very similar, and they both said the same thing. They said, it might seem that somewhere else is a better place, but you don't know what's behind. And it's the wisest thing you can do is you don't go there unless you are 100% sure.
I think generally women are more capable of managing that thought better than men. Not because they are necessarily more loyal, but in my experience, I think women are more capable of managing that thought. Yes, grass may appear greener somewhere else, but what if that grass isn't really green when I get there?
Or it's rotting underneath.
Correct. So therefore, women necessarily, and I'm generalizing here, please forgive me for generalizing. My intention isn't to generalize overwhelmingly, but my experience is what I'm citing here, my experience, so please note it. In my experience, I found women are more able and capable of managing that thought and not allowing that thought to make them run away with it. So you know that concept. Men tend to be a slightly brazen, a bit more risk-taking. And when you become a bit more brazen and risk-taking, unfortunately, of course, you cause a lot of destruction, but a lot of men don't think like that, sadly.
And let's not forget, we have a society where sometimes society supports.
Well, infidelity is not a crime. So Matt Hancock's resignation isn't because of infidelity.
No, it isn't.
He resigned because he felt that he was not living up to the COVID rules that he
promised.
Correct, and therefore he's resigning. Thus, he's compromised the very thing he has been preaching. But infidelity is not a crime in this country. Our own Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, have had many infidelities in his life. Many of the very senior MPs, ministers, people in high offices, even our Crown Prince in this country, Prince Charles. Diana's breakdown of marriage with him was because of infidelity. Infidelity is not a crime in the UK, in the Western legal system, but it is a crime in Islam.
It is, but there's a society that deals with women and men very differently when it comes to infidelity. We just tend to overlook, I believe. We tend to overlook easier when a man is unfaithful.
You think?
I think so. When a woman does it, she gets a lot more for it, and she has a lot to answer for. She has a lot more at stake when it comes to defending herself. And I don't think we treat men and women the same way when they are unfaithful. And that's also something that we need to identify, that while men, maybe by nature, I don't know, I'm not 100% sure that this is by nature, but also they are supported by a system where they are not ostracized for what they do as much as a woman would be.
Aisha Said says male infidelity is normalized in every society, including Muslim societies.
Interesting point.
Worth discussing. Do you think male infidelity is normalized in every society, including Muslim society? What do you think, brothers and sisters? We have Aisha Said saying that, and do you agree with that? Islam has a very interesting take on this, though.
I know what you're going to say now.
Yeah, well, you do. Of course, everybody does. You know that joke I told you about?
Which one?
Where the husband was making a long dua for his friend to find a good wife.
Right, yes, I remember.
He was making a lot of dua, saying, Ya Allah, please give my husband, my friend a good wife, blah, blah, blah. His wife wasn't very happy, came and gave him a wallop on his head, saying, why are you making such a dua? He goes, what do you mean, why am I making such a dua? I'm making a dua for my friend. He goes, I know you very well. You know the saying of the Prophet ﷺ, where you make this dua and the angels also say Ameen to you, so you can get another wife. I can see your plan. Ladies and gentlemen, consented relationship in Islam, consented, where two adults, a husband and a wife in a relationship, wife consents to his husband having another wife, is not considered in Islam infidelity because it's consented.
If it is consented.
If it's not consented,
the issue here isn't about that. The issue is how consented it is, how consulted it is, how comfortable it is for the first wife. You know, there are a lot of
we will
other
never be
issues.
comfortable for anybody.
We will have to do another show on this.
Of course, but I'm just saying, I just want to make sure that the polygamy is not considered as infidelity, because polygamy is allowed by Allah's law, and therefore calling it infidelity would be wrong, because you are attributing sin to something that is not sin. And there's very dangerous precedents, and I don't want to go down that route. I've seen ultra die-hard fundamentalist feminists who have gone down that route, Muslim ones, wanting to call polygamy infidelity. That's not acceptable in the Sharia discussion. But coming back to it, so we've defined infidelity in as many ways as we possibly can. Some of the manifestations of infidelity could be, you said,
I think one of them where it starts is the emotionally unavailability. So if your partner is emotionally unavailable, meaning you are not able to connect on an emotional level, you can't discuss, you can't spend time together, you can't see yourself as partners if you're married. You don't see each other on a regular basis. You don't have an emotional connection. Unavailability is one of the biggest, I think, one of the biggest problems.
Not just emotional, physical unavailability as well. A lot of men and women live in relationships which have no physical intimacy. They've either run out of steam, one of them have run out of steam, or both of them have run out of steam. If both of them have run out of steam, it's safe because there's nothing to worry about. But if one of them have run out of steam, then it is an unsafe space. Immediately, the concept or the possibilities of infidelity comes in. So emotional unavailability, physical unavailability, intimacy, sex, etc. If you're unavailable, that's a big, massive problem, and it unfortunately does exist, and it exists in a large number in many of our societies. And it also could be a habit, polygamous habit. When I say polygamous habit, I mean philandering habit. Men or women who have been used to having partners before getting married more, and not happy with one type of a mentality they've developed as a result. It's very likely that they could err and fall down that route, that massive pitfall, as we call it. So, philanderer, once a philanderer, always a philanderer. Like you said, once a cheater, always a cheater. Aisha Saeed has come back. Polygamy is allowed, but even that is designed to male interest only. Aisha, I hear you, but if Allah has said it's allowed, I can't question it. And if Allah has said it's not allowed for a woman, I can question all I like. But if I submit to Allah's law, then that's it. That's I have to accept that. And also we probably will do a discussion about polygamy at some stage, which will be quite an explosive discussion, I'm pretty certain.
No, we have to, because I fundamentally disagree with you on one particular point,
which is?
On polygamy, which is to do
with polygamy. Let's talk about it in our program. Otherwise,
great, I will.
You will give away your secret. Let them wait.
I will.
Let them sweat over what my wife says and how she disagrees. But I don't want to go down that route of saying
that polygamy is infidelity. So
yeah, it's not infidelity at all.
So let's just stick with that, because our topic is about infidelity and what drives us to infidelity, what we do, why we do it, and what to do once it's happened, how you're rebuilding your relationship. Because there are a number of cases where people are actually making an active choice of, I know it has happened, how do I forgive, how do I move on, or do I just leave the person who has been unfaithful to me? So people are on different spectrums, so we need to discuss some of those issues. So once we are getting into the idea that I am close to be unfaithful, and I started, let's say that's the scenario, what constitutes the actual breaking of the barrier? Is it when I use the first time I use flirtatious language? Is it when I meet the person for the first time? Because it's not, you see, it's not very clear for a lot of people. Is that, does it break the trust of my husband, for example, or my wife, if I go out with somebody that he or she would not approve of? Does it break the trust or the boundaries when I am sending text messages which are inappropriate, or it could be leading to inappropriate communication, emailing, messaging, continuously being on the chat groups? And let's face it, a lot of our community, we have this issue. It happens all the time. People are getting caught on chatting to multiple women or I don't
Men.
men. I don't know that many of that, but I know a lot of women who come to me and say, well, I just called my husband, he was talking to 3 different women on 3 different chat groups, and I don't know what to make of it. So let's where is the actual, is there actual point?
Well, I think the boundaries between man and woman's relationship must be defined first. What is it that constitutes the boundary? Boundary is where you are no longer interested in that person on a non-sexual transaction or relationship. It pushes to even thought processes are inspired by your sexual fantasies. That's when the boundary is blurred. So if I meet a woman, or for that matter, or men in some of the opposite way, and if my thoughts are dominated by sexual thoughts, then that unfortunately is the wrong space. You need to withdraw. That's what Allah means. And lower your gaze. The Arabic word lower your gaze, while it is literal, yes, but also it means that you have to withdraw from a space where you could find yourself in rather sticky situation.
Or keeping on too long for the first gaze.
Or for the, that's the other one. Let me look as long as I can.
Yeah, I'm still on my first gaze.
Allah knows what you're doing, of course. So, brothers and sisters, I think the boundary is very important. And the first and the foremost boundary is you're the only one who knows when your thoughts have translated into sexual thoughts, and it's no longer a platonic relationship.
Which is why it's so important to identify that the hadith collection starts with the hadith of intention, because everything
Imam
Nawawi's 40 hadith, everything begins with an intention, and it's only you who knows what that intention is behind that message, behind that conversation, behind that text message, or whatever you are doing, or email, or that behavior. It's only you. So intention, we talk about it a lot, and we always identify intention as a way of, oh, we just know, I know what I want to do. But actually, when we really reflect, the value of reflection is so important. If you truly are able to reflect, you will identify, and any of those people who have been unfaithful, they would know that which moment
it went over to the other side.
It went over to the other side, and they could not stop themselves.
So that red line you must be very clear of. Rasulullah said, don't be in that space with another person of the opposite sex, which is private. Private space, in other words, nobody else can see you, nobody else can have influence over you, nobody can hear you. That's called private space. It could be a car, it could be the back of the cinema, it could be in the forest, it could be in a house, it could be any space that you create, called a bubble, I call it, the modern world bubble, which is away from everybody. And even in some cases, in the society where you are meeting, and because there is no boundary in this society even, you could do a lot of things that would be constituting immorality according to Islam. So the first golden rule is, if your thought process has become sexual, withdraw. Don't meet the person in private, for that would lead you to very dangerous space. And the third rule is, don't be physical with them. There is no need to touch. There is no need to have that physical interaction. I can be next to the person talking to them, no problem. I don't have to look at the floor all the time when I'm talking to them. But as soon as I start touching, one person's touch could be other person's arousal. You don't know what's going on in the mind of the person. If I'm touching, what's going on? You don't know what's happening in the other person, nor do you know what's happening in you, or the other person doesn't know what's happening in you. So don't touch. 3 rules really. If your mind has become sexual, your thoughts have turned into sexual thoughts with the other person, withdraw, look away. Don't be in a private space with the other person, with the opposite sex, that can't be seen or heard or witnessed by other people. And the third is, don't be physical with the person. If you can maintain those 3, you've created a clear boundary between your relationship with the opposite sex.
And remember that your intention is the one that distinguishes you from the person who is actively taking responsibility for not going down the route, or the person who is just going to say one thing led to another. So intention is so crucial, that if you know that I am doing it because I want to cheat, from that moment on, it is your responsibility.
Yeah.
If someone is coming towards you with dubious intentions, and you don't know, dubious kind of behavior, then stopping it is your responsibility, because it goes just 2 ways. And it's, for me, it's really the essence of infidelity here is intention. It's really the core of everything. If I'm intentional about doing it or not doing it, that's going to separate
But it could
me.
also happen unintentionally. You're in a space and suddenly the chemistry is so strong.
Right.
Unwittingly, you've just gone down that route.
No, but that's still my intention. I need to be aware enough.
But intention, bit too late by then.
No, but every moment, I think we need to be aware of what we do and why we do it. Every moment, even in that space, I need to be awake enough or aware enough that something is happening, and I either stop it and I say this is something that I don't want to participate, or if I do participate, then from there on I have become responsible for participating. So it's not one thing leading to another. That's just an airy-fairy, for me it's an airy-fairy expression of, oh, I'm not responsible. We are responsible for every step we take.
It's like you're driving your car.
Infidelity.
It's like driving your car. If you drive along the road and a police officer stops you and says, why did you jump the red light? You say, police officer, I was slightly absent-minded, so really I'm not responsible for this. Police officer would say, if you are absent-minded, you should not be in the road. Have you been taking drugs? No. Yes, then get off the road. If you've been taking alcohol, it would be arrested, of course. We're responsible for all our actions, absolutely right. Whether you are in a space that you allowed yourself to be compromised, or you've intentionally gone into a space looking for a means to compromise, or you're engaging to compromise your relationship by using your phone or using your computer inappropriately. However, whatever you do, that intentional or even inadvertently getting into a space that would lead you to. So, for example, if somebody says, I'm going to a bar, but I had no intention of doing anything wrong, well, you're absolutely silly. A bar, which is completely anti a thesis to Islamic space, would lead you to some sort of a compromise. Whether you drink alcohol, whether alcohol falls on your body, whether you start staring at a person of the opposite gender, sexualizing it, or observe people behaving in that way. All of those things are compromising you. So there is nothing that you can say that would excuse you for going into that space in the first place.
I've been reading quite a lot about this, that this constitutes almost from a scientific perspective, is that we build habits. Habits are not turning up one day out of the blue.
You're not born with it.
Yeah. So we build habits.
The only instinctive thing we are born with is to eat, to cry when we're in pain.
But that's instinct, and that's for survival.
Correct.
I'm talking about habits. I'm talking about
the reason I'm mentioning it, because some people say, oh, sex is instinctive. I want to make that distinction. No, it's not. It's inbuilt within you. You feel it, the urges, that's instinctive. But what you do with it is not instinctive. It's consensual, intentional, and part and parcel of an active role. It's not passive.
It's like diet, right? So food is something that is instinctual, but you choose what you eat.
Yeah.
You are what you eat, and you become what you consume and what consumes you, because this is exactly what distinguishes us from animals. You know, we have a capacity to choose. I can eat junk food knowing the consequences, that I will be putting on weight and I will be very unhealthy and my arteries are going to be clogged up and I will have a heart attack by the age of 45. Or I can choose,
Alhamdulillah, you haven't had one.
Healthy food, not yet. Healthy food, good drinks, good nourishment for my body, because I'm responsible for what happens to me. It's for me it's the same. We choose our thoughts, but because if we don't learn how to do that, we just keep calling it one thing leads to another.
And I want you all, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, to be very aware that infidelity is not something that lands from the heavens on you. No, you actually plan and execute it based on your thought process that leads to planning, action, and even before action, seeking and looking. Avenues for these have to be sought for, or you have to actively participate in it. Anyway, so the impact of it, let's go to the impact part, because obviously we're already at 10:35 now, 25 minutes before we finish our program. What is the impact of your infidelity? What happens?
Gosh, maybe we should ask Matt Hancock's wife.
We should.
They've got 3 children, right? So there is a family there. I think they've got 3 children. There is a family, there is a life that they created together. I am assuming that the wife was supporting him in his career. I don't know what his wife is doing, by the way, as profession. But I'm assuming that the life they built together has come about as a result of working together on something that they both wanted, which is having children. And now imagine that the children seeing their father on the pages of newspapers.
Yeah, and with another woman.
With another
in
woman.
a very compromising position. This is quite a destructive state of being, ladies and gentlemen. The impact is awful. Your own personal reputation is destroyed forever. That's
maybe not in British politics, because we have people who have done this before, and they carry on doing as if nothing happened. So maybe I wouldn't be worried so much about that. What I'm worried about is that what's the impact on children? What's the impact on family life?
Let's ask this to people. What do you think is the impact of infidelity? All of you are quiet today because it's a difficult topic, I understand. It's not something that you can roll off your tongue, as we say. Well, let's try and collectively come up with some impact. Go on, brothers and sisters, write some of your thoughts. What are the impacts of infidelity? While you're doing that, let's promote our books. I know you guys have been watching us for a long time. I know you're fed up of hearing about this book or these books. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got 2 books here. My book is called 10 Steps to Getting Married and Staying Married, and has been out for a few months now, alhamdulillah. We've sold a few books and we would love to sell more. If you haven't bought one, it is the wedding season. Please do buy 1, 2 or 3, as many as you like, and we can certainly get them to you, and you will give them as gifts to people who are getting married. If you're getting married, buy it before you get married. Help yourself and help your spouse live and enjoy a marital space, because you're aware, you are knowledgeable. I spoke to a couple the other day, and I said to the couple, have you ever read a book on marriage? No. And you're married? Yes. Why are you married without having read a book on marriage? Well, we didn't think we needed a book. Of course you do. That's why you're here, counseling with me. Ladies and gentlemen, you can avoid a lot of trouble by reading a book, preparing for your marriage. Or after being married, if you don't know enough, if you're struggling, buy the book and get it into your mind, into your habits, into your behavior. Together read or individually read. It's called 10 Steps to Getting Married and Staying Married. You can buy this book in our bookshop. It's online bookshop. It's called barefootinstitute.com/bookstore.
And my book has a chapter about relationships, which is all neuroscience, what happens in your brain, what happens when you get tempted, how do we process emotions, how do we function in a relationship. So I have one chapter on relationships and another chapter on emotions, which is all to do with the physical changes, what's going on through your mind. And I always believe that one of the reasons why I wrote this book is because the longest journey we'll ever make is from our head to our heart. We really need to understand ourselves. We need to understand our intention, which I think is one of the key aspects of the topic that we are discussing today, which is infidelity. So intention, knowing yourself, you won't be able to change intentions and modify yourself unless you truly understand what's going on inside of you, inside of your head, inside of your body. And really understand this, read the book, because it's one of my personal journeys that I have taken for the many countries I lived in, including Spain and Egypt and Morocco and some really interesting places where I learned some of these lessons about life.
So please, brothers and sisters, get on our website and order it today. Let's see if a few of you can order today. I don't want to start doing the same auctioning thing that I do on TV sometimes. But go on, please.
No, please don't.
Let's start and let's see how many of you can. Sulaiman Saka says, Salaam alaikum Ajmal and Hannah. The effect of infidelity would be regret and shame, of course, long term on your reputation and children's lives. True, very true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rasmin PT says, Salam to you both. I'm at work, but we will listen later. Can't wait. Thank you, Rasmin. Rasmin is a personal trainer. That's why it's called PT.
Oh, right.
So if you're looking for a personal trainer, Rasmin is your woman.
I see. Might reach out to her, actually.
Rasmin, please do get in touch with my wife. She's looking for a personal trainer. You heard this. And she will be able to give you good advice.
Wonderful.
Alhamdulillah. But Sulaiman Saka's point is very important.
Guilt and shame.
And the long-term impact on your reputation and the lives of your children.
Regret and shame, sorry, that's what he is saying. And there's something really interesting about this as well, because we often don't make the distinction between guilt and shame. We don't know what it is, because I'm sure people feel ashamed and people feel guilty on both sides, actually, because I know a lot of women who have been cheated on. They say, I feel really ashamed because the rest of the community is thinking I am not an adequate wife. So the husband had to go and cheat on me to find somebody else. There's a slight difference between guilt and shame. Well, a lot of difference. But one of the things is that guilt is when I do something and it feels wrong. Shame is when I did something wrong and I am wrong. So I am the source of the wrongdoing and I'm the product, and that's shame for me.
This society teaches you actively to not feel shame about the wrong that you do.
Yes.
Because morality is no longer defined clearly or absolutely, is relative. It's all to do with how you feel. If you feel happy about it, it must be good. If you feel unhappy about it, well,
go and
never
change
mind.
it and go do whatever makes you happy.
Or do it again, in some cases.
And you know, I really think that some of the traditional values like loyalty, like faithfulness, like honesty, like transparency in relationships are really fading quite fast. And we need to be very careful because our children are going into a society where for them, what becomes a norm is what they see. And we need to make sure that we leave them with the right lessons, that honesty, transparency, fidelity, or loyalty are important pillars of a relationship.
We've got a couple of more points. Roman Ahmed says, once actioned, way too difficult to forgive and forget. True.
Yeah.
And then Aisha Saeed, looks like she's on a mission today. Depends which part of the world you are in. Mostly men would get away with it, would even take pride in it. Mostly women and children would be worse off.
Yeah, we talked about this. We
Yes.
addressed it. That there's a society. I think society as a whole, in general, are a lot more capable of forgiving men for doing it. We kind of just
But I don't
close
want
our
to.
eyes.
I don't want to. I agree that it does, but I don't want people to forget that infidelity takes place with a woman as well. It's not just man does it to himself. He goes and does it with a woman. So there is a woman involved. If there is a woman involved, I don't want to blame men for it. Why did that woman allow that to happen? Why didn't she say, no, go away, get away from me? You're married already. What are you doing here? Get lost. Kick him out. Why did the woman not do that? It's not only men who do it, you know. There's a very beautiful, very, very beautiful hadith of Rasulullah. 3 people got stuck in a cave. A rock fell in front of them. And they didn't know what to do. They knew there was no way they could move that rock. They pushed and pushed, nothing happened. So they all looked at one another. They were very good people. They said, guys, make dua to Allah with the best of your actions ever. So 3 of them made 3 du'as. And I don't want to go through all 3, but just one of them is very beautiful. At the end, the last one who made the dua, he said, Ya Allah, I had a very, very beautiful cousin that I was very infatuated by. And I was always eyeing her up, and I was thinking about all sorts of rubbish. There was a famine, and she came from a very poor family. Even though she was my cousin, she came to me for food. And I said to her, I'll give you food in exchange for a physical relationship with you. And she said, okay, because she had no choice. She was going to die. So she said she accepted it. As I approached her, she said, please, oh my cousin, fear Allah. Ya Allah, I feared you. And I walked away and withdrew at that very moment. So, and it is said in the hadith, the entire rock moved. This is you'll find this hadith mentioned in Riyadh al-Salihin, very powerful. So my question is, why couldn't the woman say, get away? I understand the man who has done it, you are saying, are being praised by society. I see or I hear it often that they get away with it. But why should we not hold women accountable too? Men are responsible, of course, irresponsible behavior. But why didn't the woman say no? We need to do it both ways, right? That's my point. Anyway, impact. So we talked about sense of betrayal, shame, guilt, reputational damage,
loss of
trust, yeah, very true. Confidentiality is gone.
communication is probably gone.
And children and destroyed family. Those children will forever live with that awful thought about their parent, one of them or both of them, who have done this awful thing. And this will destroy them forever because they will never be able to hold down the relationship in the same natural way a relationship should be, because their template is their parents who may have behaved rotten. So, ladies and gentlemen,
it's a tough topic. I can feel the heaviness, and it's a really tough concept to take. How responsible we are for our behavior, because it will impact our children
and us and others around us. The whole social infrastructure within the UK or European society is broken down because they've redefined sexual crime as no longer crime, unless it's rape or pedophilia. Otherwise, sexual behavior is no longer seen as crime, especially infidelity, sex outside marriage, not a crime at all. Because of this redefining of moral values, we now have no way of putting and holding anyone to account. It's okay. The law doesn't say it's not allowed. So Matt Hancock got away with it. Only thing he did was to apologize for not living up to the COVID standard. What about his wife, his children? What about the destruction of the social infrastructure called marriage?
In his resignation letter, I think there is a half a sentence at the beginning of the letter saying that I must be with my children at this time.
But he wasn't.
But he's not referring to the infidelity itself, but he said, I must be with my children at this time.
The very next day he says and makes an announcement, I'm leaving my wife. So obviously they have gone through a terrible time, but who is responsible for it? And because the impact isn't accepted by the society as a crime. It's a problem. That's the problem. Suleiman Saka says, and low self-esteem in the partner who was cheated on.
Yes, that takes years to rebuild. It takes years forget about rebuilding trust. That's one big chunk of work that you need to do as a couple. But rebuilding that loss of self-esteem, because you will always have it in your mind, psychologically, you will always think about, even when you're rebuilding the relationship.
Or if you're married, you will never be able to trust your husband that quickly, because you will think, oops, my previous one did this one will.
Or what's going on with his mind again, or is he just, what is he hiding? So yes, absolutely.
Living in paranoia is awful. It's awful. And it's been inflicted on this person. They don't need to have this inflicted on them. You need to be, of course, brave enough. The truth is, we'll talk about this in a minute, about action. But the truth is, if you're responsible for it, and you are,
if you do it,
yes, you should also be brave enough to embrace, take responsibility, and move on, but be prepared to face the consequences.
And it might be that you will be out of the house.
Of everything, you lose a lot. So that's impact. We talked about a lot about impact. I do want to talk about some aspects of some of the reasons why it could happen, like we talked about it earlier, but just want to touch upon it again. Emotional absence, physical absence. There are relationships which are sexless. There are relationships which are emotionless. What do people expect in such a relationship?
So for me, this is a really important part of the question, is that we have a lifestyle where physically not being available has become a norm. Obviously not with COVID, but people travel, people work internationally. There's a lot of absence, both on men and women, where the man is away, the woman is staying at home, or the other way around, the woman is away and the man is staying at home. So physically they are not available. It may not have started off from anything but this is what work is, this is how our work life is, but what's the cost? And I think that's something that couples don't often think about. It's very lavish and it looks amazing that you're traveling all the time and doing all the things, but the one who stays at home, the one who travels, they have two different experiences, and yet they are not physically available to each other. Video calling, this Zoom kind of conversation, Zoom connection is not going to cut it. You need to make sure that physically you create time. And I'm talking about both men and women, in the way that men often complain, oh, my wife is not available. Men complain more. There's this famous, I think it's a Woody Allen sketch, when he says how many times you have relationship with your wife, and he says, oh, 4 times. It's hardly ever. It's 4 times a week. And the wife said, 4 times a week is just way too much that I cannot handle. So it's that perception of what is physical availability, what does it mean, and does your lifestyle actually support the distance between each other? And then sometimes you have to make some choices. If someone is away for weeks, a husband, for example, I know a lot of couples where the husband is traveling, goes abroad, stays there for 6-7 weeks. What does he expect of his wife?
That's absolutely true. And that could lead to a breakup of that intimacy, that closeness, and lead to other things. But the reverse is also true. When they're together and one of the partners has lost interest in intimacy, in that sexual relationship, lost it completely, not interested in it anymore. And it can happen in life because of various life stages. It can happen. And when it does happen, what do? You can't just ignore it. You can't brush it under the carpet and think it's going to go away. It's not going to go away.
No.
You have to deal with it, and deal with it maturely, deal with it openly, and deal with it in a way that you take responsibility for your part. So if I've lost interest, I need to make sure that I tell my wife absolutely clearly I've lost interest, and I give her space to do whatever she wants to do, whatever is allowed legally and morally, and of course Islamically. We can't brush it under the carpet. Unfortunately, at some stage in life, you may have to make a choice. Actually, this is not working anymore. I may have to go. It's better than infidelity. And that's why
I think it's more honorable.
And I also say the same thing. It's better for an existing relationship with children, with everything that has been built, when intimacy is missing, that some couples may end up having polygamous relationship because of that. There is nothing you can do.
Let's keep my opinion for the next show,
I
because
know.
I have very strong opinion about that too. That what happens is when you introduce a polygamous relationship to your existing family, you've got children. What do you say to the children?
The impact of it is very big. I get that, but what I'm saying is, what is the alternative? Say, for example, one of the partners says, "I'm not interested. I'm really sorry. I'm not interested." What does the partner do? In an Islamic setting, if it happens to be a man, he has the right to get married again. This is a legitimate right within this legitimate reason. What happens because of that, they have to learn to manage it. But I'm just saying that it is better than infidelity. If he went off and
behind someone's back
and did all that, both sinfully and breaking trust and confidentiality,
and destructively,
that's wrong, right? So Islam has a solution, but it has to be managed better, differently, not the way we have seen being managed, both by men and women. But we'll talk about polygamy, inshallah, in our future program. So do keep watching, right? Do keep watching. So we talked about definition. We talked about why people possibly could be pursuing such a destructive path. We talked about impact. We talked about a responsibility. Let's talk about solutions for the last 5, 6, 7 minutes. 5 minutes.
Do you have a solution?
Yes. Do you have a solution?
What's your solution?
This is when everyone is going to come up alive, I think. Everyone is just watching our program.
Let's hope.
If you're watching our program, if you've got nothing to say today, we're not surprised. We're not going to take it as an offense. It's not offensive at all that you've decided, most of you, or some of you have, alhamdulillah, spoken. Actually, a handful of you. I'm very grateful. We're grateful. But for the rest of you, come on, give us some solutions. What do you suggest an infidelity-ridden relationship should do to solve their problem? Any ideas? Any thoughts?
And as we said at the beginning of the program, let's not kid ourselves, let's not fool ourselves. It's happening in our community probably 3 times more often than you can imagine, your estimation, according to your estimation. It's rampant in our community. We have addictions, we have all sorts of other things that are leading to infidelity. So this is a topic that we do need to keep talking about. We have to address what's going on within ourselves, what's going on in our house, what's going on in our homes, because we are also experiencing, a lot of different kind of challenges from society. The pressure is different, and I'm not saying it's better or worse than it was before. I think every society has its own challenges. One of our challenges, I believe, in this world today where we live is the boundaries of morality, and we need to be very, very careful that how do we manage that? What do we see? What do we accept? What do we stand up for? What do we stand against? Where do we take responsibility for our own, very own behavior? I also believe that there's a lot of things Islam offers as a solution: loyalty, faithfulness, structure, safety, transparency, honesty. It's all comes from the Islamic framework that always makes it much easier to manage a challenging and difficult relationship.
Essentially. Lagdad Kohli says, women after marriage and get kids don't look after themselves.
Yes, we don't have time. We don't have energy. We don't have help. We don't have a structure to look after ourselves.
Well, you see, this is the irony of it all. You don't want to live in a multi-generational home, and then you complain about lack of structure. If you lived in a multi-generational home, this is me being flippant here. Not that I prefer.
Of course.
Not that I prefer. But then you would have your in-laws to look after the kids, and you could possibly concentrate on some of the things that you've complained about, which is that you have no time. You could have made some time. You could have gone for a walk, for a run,
I think
for a jog.
While it has some truth and elements of truth in it, I think it's very idealistic that a multi-generational home is going to solve all the problems.
I didn't say it will. I didn't say it will solve all the problems. Don't misquote me. I said it's one of the aid that would have been available for you for looking after yourself. You can't have everything. That's my point. Modern world has created this utopia in our heads, and that is, if I get my own house, me and my husband can do anything we want. No, you can't. You need help, support. And often our family support that are available, we reject it because we don't want to live with our in-laws. It just doesn't work. in my view. I'm not saying we should all live it with our in-laws. I'm saying having relationship with everybody around, your in-laws, your brother-in-law, sister-in-law, a good relationship could be another way of enhancing your potential for looking after yourself. Lots of responsibility, attempt at reconciliation with professional marriage counseling, and if that doesn't work, then divorce amicably. That is very true, Shumail Ali. I think it's a very good point. So we always say to people, if you are suffering in silence, not a good idea. Come to us, or come to anybody who is professionally available to provide you counseling. We do counseling and coaching for relationship and all sorts of troubles. My wife Hannah and I, we do it all the time. So get in touch with us, info@barefootinstitute.com, and we'll try and help you, inshallah. We have Sulaiman Sako has written a long message here. For me, unfortunately, it's a red line. If children were involved, I may have other feelings in trying to make it work. This may involve change of environment and evidence of long-term shift in attitude. Inside, deep regret, turning to Allah, and sincere change in behavior, and more effort on building a deeply emotionally, physically satisfying, fun, respectful, loving relationship. Quite comprehensive.
It is.
Quite comprehensive, Sulaiman. Maybe Sulaiman Saka, you can come to our program and be an expert who talks about relationship. I know Sulaiman, by the way, he's a dentist and very good guy, mashallah.
And what I love about his comment is that he looks at what's going on the outside and what's going on the inside. There has to be something that we make intentional and make dua about this, but making dua alone is, of course, it's not enough. So it's about changing some environment or changing some patterns of thinking, changing some behavior that is going to lead to change. Just making dua on its own is not going to solve the problem.
This is exactly what the Quran suggests when it comes to tawbah. But we don't want to talk about that right now because it is not about tawbah, it's about our program to do with infidelity. Though you do need to do tawbah for infidelity itself, but that's between you and Allah. So talk about remedies. Some of the most important remedies is if you sit down and talk to one another. Really, sit down and have a chat. And if you sit down and see it's not working, invite a counselor. Book an appointment with counseling, mediation, sit down and get it done ASAP. Even if the resolution is divorce, let that be done through conversations rather than firing guns at one another, becoming mean and terrible. People do become awful sometimes when they're ending their relationship. Your scorn does not need to be boundless. Is it woman's scorn has no bounds, Shakespeare said?
Probably, I don't know exactly.
Yeah, when a woman is angry, apparently, that's it.
I just know what Ertuğrul said, that there was a statement in Ertuğrul that what a woman decides to destroy, nobody can rebuild.
Unfortunately. So men, don't behave badly, otherwise you'll get destroyed. But leaving that comment aside, seriously, have a chat. If you can't have a chat, get a counselor, a mediator to help you facilitate a chat. If you can't change your behavior, if you can't address some of the problems that you're facing, then divorce is inevitable. It is better to divorce than live in a miserable relationship. That, to me, is the ultimate. Why would you want to live in a miserable relationship? End it.
Always remember that when you are going for counseling, when you're going for help in case of infidelity, you are not just dealing with each other as an individual, don't make it personal. That's what I'm trying to say. It happened, and deal with the issue instead of firing at each other, blaming, taking the blame, pointing fingers, continuously. It's a point scoring. It's not helping, and the situation, the infidelity is as an issue is the third issue. You are discussing infidelity. You are not talking about how horrible you are to each other, or what happened, or why did you do that, or it's not about the why question necessarily. You will ask about the why question in context of the relationship.
The toxicity is awful and takes you, burns you, it poisons you, and it destroys your own integrity and your own future life. So don't become horrible. Don't be mean. Don't personalize it in that way. If you can't deal with it, end the relationship amicably. There's no gain in being nasty to one another. No gain in making up stories because the solicitor told you. Make up this story, make up that story. Say to the court that he was abusive. Say to the court he's hit me. Say to the court that he's been controlling or she's been controlling. On the day of judgment, all of these will become a testimony for you or against you. Anyway, brothers and sisters, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, please stay safe. Sulaiman Saka says, he quotes Shakespeare, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned."
Oh, great. Thank you for giving it to us.
Aisha Begum says, thank you. Thanks a lot, both of you, for tremendous presentation, nice explanation in Gracia. Thank you very much, Aisha. We're going to finish our program now. It's 11 o'clock. Only thing we want to wish is have a fantastic relationship. Please stay married and be happy. But if you can't stay married, don't fight, just leave. After having done counseling, of course. And for that, come to us, info@barefootinstitute.com, or buy our book. Both of those books are available on barefootinstitute.com/our bookstore, of course, as you can imagine. Please do order, do support us, and inshallah, until next time, which is next Sunday, same time, same place, we will be back.
Maybe talking about polygamy. Just
We don't
keep
know.
keep an eye out for our posters. We'll be back next Sunday, same time. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.